With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give them the coziest scuba matching set, the real gift is this. And this. And this. This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give a gift that goes beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
His code name's Jackal. He's an exceptional assassin.
Streaming now on Peacock.
He will kill again, unless we stop him.
Academy Award winner Eddie Redmayne.
You're paying me to kill him. I am charging you for getting away.
The Jackal's here. Look at the exits.
BAFTA Award winner Lashana Lynch.
I will find him, and I will kill him myself.
I like to win.
So do I.
The Day of the Jackal. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
In a fight for her life, Feyre faces down the Naga when none other than Tamlin comes to her aid. Their mutual prowess in the hunt binds them together. But are the subsequent deaths around them sufficient to build the foundation of emotional intimacy Feyre craves?
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning.
Explicit language as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, and depression will reoccur throughout the podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we are exploring Sarah J. Maas's most controversial novel in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is Jack.
And I'm Amy, and this week we're discussing chapters 15 through 17 in A Court of Thorns and Roses.
This week, we ask ourselves, what is emotional intimacy, and how does Feyre's interpretation of that influence her interaction with Tamlin?
Additionally, how does Feyre's defeat of the Naga upset the racial dynamics she has previously come to accept as status quo? Themes we will see include violence and love as a partnership.
The perfect dynamic.
We open chapter 15 with Feyre's encounter with the Naga. Very quickly, Feyre is viewed as prey to be hunted and eaten. We see on page 132, the four Naga crept closer, as if savoring the slowness of the hunt, as if they already knew how I tasted. Despite being tasty, she's not even viewed as a full meal by the Naga, because she is scrawny and malnourished. The Naga call her out for this, and Sarah J. Maas uses this to remind us that Feyre is still very weak and viewed as weak by the Fairy, and she's not at her full power.
It's just rude also. Like how,
yeah, it is just rude.
Stop pointing it.
Could you try again? Shut up, Siri.
It's just rude for that. Well, yeah. I don't know why our things do that. I hate how, I mean, not hate. It's just like funny every time they call her out on being skinny. I'm always like, excuse me, sir.
We don't tolerate body shaming here.
We don't do body shaming here. We don't accept that here. But maybe because like I'm always viewing this through the feminist point of view, I just immediately assume like, is this a sexual, like why is everyone so sexual here?
Yeah,
and
no, that's true.
I mean, they talk about her taste and then they have like forked tongues. So
it's gross. That's not what we're here for,
this
folks.
This is the Marxist point right now.
During this hunt on page 134, Feyre thinks, I would not be hunted down like a deer among wolves. And you know I've been on this since the beginning. The deer image and Feyre's relation to being viewed as the deer is really important.
I mean, you've been saying that from the beginning because Sarah J. Maas has been doing it from the beginning.
That is correct.
Because she's a good writer.
The brilliance that is Sarah J. Maas.
It's just smart.
What I love about this, though, is that juxtaposed near the end of the chapter, after Feyre's killed two Naga, she is not the prey. she is the huntress.
Love it. And, another point I'll keep harping on is the fact that Sarah J. Maas is doing a great job reminding us that she's the huntress, because at the end of the book, she has a hell of 3 months where she is fighting things left and right. And all of this is just reminding us that, you know what, she can hold her own against the fairies later on.
She can. And I think we've been lulled into a sense of complacency at this point in the novel because it's been so long since she's had to be the hunter. And I think this is where we start to really see the connection between violence and love. This is best illustrated to me on page 133. As Feyre's fleeing from the naga, the quote says, "I careened through a thicket, and thorns ripped at my cheeks. I barely felt their stinging kisses or the warm blood sliding down my face." This is not going to be the only time Feyre compares a cut to being kissed. This gives us a sense of her warped view of love and explains why or how she is so susceptible to Tamlin's advances when he is so violent and there are so many red flags.
I didn't even catch it the first time.
Oh, really?
Like the sting of kisses. When you pointed it out, I was like, gosh darn, that was a good one.
And it happens more than once.
You're right. You're absolutely right. For whatever reason, that went over my head. I was like, oh, Amy, you caught one.
Ah, brilliant.
Brilliant.
But it's not me, it's Sarah J. Maas. I think this violence and love partnership is also further explored during the fight with the naga. So before Tamlin comes to rescue Feyre, she is described as bellowing with fury and screaming. And when Tamlin shows up, he roars. And they're the perfect feral match for each other.
Yep. Because she is still feral and primal and
exactly.
Animalistic.
She's still
at this
that wild
point.
beast that Nesta always called her.
Yep. A wild deer.
A wild doe. When Tamlin rips into the naga, she isn't terrified of him. Instead, her survival instincts are still in full gear, and she keeps low to the ground, knife at the ready, waiting. She isn't fearful until she knows that she is safe and no longer in that survival mode.
She's not fearful because, again, like coming from my point of view, it's hot. It's a trope that we have many times in many books where, this very strong, powerful male comes in and saves you, and you can't be mad at that. Your life was saved. And sure enough, we can see that in some of the quotes. On page 135, Tamlin rose to his feet, wrenching his claws out of the creature's abdomen. Feral rage still smolder in his gaze, and I flinched as he knelt beside me. I mean, that combination of smoldering and kneeling, there's a submissiveness to that. Mm-hmm. There's a hunger in there. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not reaching here when I say there's sex involved at this point.
Oh, yeah, no, it's so sexy.
It's hot. He's a predator, and he's powerful enough to kill them, and he uses his strength to protect her. On page 35, the wrath faded from his eyes, and the claws slipped back under his skin, and he quite literally declaws himself for her. And it's just that moment of you have this powerful, now she's discovered, High Lord come in, rips it apart, and for her, he kneels and removes his claws.
He declaws herself for her in this moment, and she appreciates it. Mm-hmm. But when they're under the mountain and he is a beast without claws,
it's not
she
hot.
resents him.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because he does declaw himself throughout the book in different situations, and both times, quote unquote, for her. Mm-hmm. This is just the right time to do it.
Yeah, this is appropriate.
Yeah.
What is kind of sad to me, though, these little acts, this minimal effort of not having his claws out or offering to help Feyre up.
Yeah. Not letting her die. Just that minimal effort starts to sway Feyre to fall more in love with him. The fact that he comes to help her with the naga means the world to her. Though when the fight is over, she doesn't let Tamlin touch her. Once she's able to process this thought of like, oh, he came to save me from the naga. Oh, I'm so grateful. That's when she starts to let him touch her and comfort her. It's funny because he literally says that's the least he can do. Like, even he knows that saving her is quite literally the minimum. I feel like I just sound like some kind of horn dog because I'm like, it's sex. Everything leads to sex. But it is sex. Like, because even his touch on 135, he reached a hand towards me and I shuddered as he ran cool, wet fingers down my stinging, aching cheek. The same cheek that was kissed by Thorns. Feyre has started to change the way she thinks about Tamlin, but most importantly, the reason why we keep pointing this out is that this is how Feyre is into him and starts to be into him. And there's a lot of violence going on, but the violence is leading to something, which we will get to. But, how can you not be into him when he's standing there all bloodied for you?
We talked last week about, what is the beginning of Feyre and Tamlin's love story. And we talked about it happening before this moment. But I think this moment solidifies Feyre's sexual awakening for Tamlin.
Yeah, there's definitely like this is the sexual awakening. This is where emotional intimacy begins. The other one was the door opened, quite literally, as you pointed out, and people stepped through it. Now we're actually seeing it happen.
This is like the wet dream that comes after the thought of like, could I be into this person?
Wet dream of wet, bloody fingers going down her cheek.
Right. Or the blood that's soaking his shirt, because when he takes off his tunic to give it to her, she notices the muscles under his shirt.
The way the blood soaking it made the muscles, stand out even more. I shivered again and savored the warmth that leaked from the cloth. But he saved me, killed for me.
She's so hot for him.
I mean, I know everyone in the community is anti-Tamlin, but let's just bring us back to book 1 and live in the world where we don't know about Rhysand and just, come on, guys. We all were into Tamlin.
I mean, don't you regularly ask your boyfriend if he would kill for you?
I do. I do ask him.
Wouldn't you be hot for someone who just killed for you?
In this theoretical sense, yeah. Thing is, though, he actually is willing to protect her. And that's the thing that blows Feyre's mind, is that he's willing to protect her without any benefit to him. At least that's what she thinks, right? Like, she's like, whoa, he's gone out of his way to save me. I'm worthless. I do nothing. Like, she actually does think that she's worthless here. And it instantly puts Tamlin miles ahead of anyone else in Feyre's life, because no one has ever put Feyre's safety as any kind of priority. So she's immediately falling for him here. And we see the link between protection and intimacy here. And that's something that we've been kind of building up to, and we're really seeing here is emotional intimacy being linked to a lot of violence, protection, and we'll go more into that.
Her elevation of Tamlin and his willingness to put her safety first is in part due to the fact that she's recently discovered that he is a High Lord. All of a sudden, she is less proud because this amazing being that is so far beyond her reach is deigning to acknowledge her existence.
Deigning that her existence is worth continuing to exist.
Right. And I don't know that she would react this way if he was not High Lord. I think she would still have some resentment.
Oh, if Lucian had been the one to save her.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The title, the power, she's placed value on.
Which is, from a Marxist theory, very important.
Oh, yeah, because Marxist theory, let's remind everyone, people hear Marxist, they think communism. It's not what that is. It's about power dynamics. It's about people in power and people not in power.
And Tamlin, as a being in power, is now somehow worthy of her adoration. She even says on page 137, I wanted to tell him how much that meant, that the High Lord of the Spring Court thought I was worth saving. She's fangirling at this point.
BTS, just like, oh my God, I'm worth saving. So we've already have this emotional intimacy there. She's in. And at that point, he tells her that it's time to go home, implying that it's a place for both of them, when clearly it's his place. And granted, in that moment, she's kind of like, it's not really my home. But what we can see there is that he's called it home, referencing it's their home. He's leaned into the emotional intimacy at this point as well.
And I think that's because they've become bound to each other through their mutual prowess when it comes to the hunting of the naga. After Tamlin makes this comment about going home?
Yeah, after he kills them?
Yeah, at least after
stared at each other longingly?
Yeah, after something. At this point, he has helped her up off the ground and their hands are linked. And on page 136, it says, I stared at our linked hands, both coated in blood that wasn't our own. No, he hadn't been the only one to spill blood just now. And it wasn't just my blood that still coated my tongue. Perhaps that made me as much of a beast as him. But he had saved me, killed for me.
Their joined killing brings them together. Feyre loves it. There's literally a blood pact between them practically, right?
Yeah. And I think we see this in all forms of media, that like people who kill together stay together, not necessarily like lovers, but partners in crime. Feyre just takes it one step further.
It means love for her.
It means love.
When you read it, there's a couple lines that go by before they let go of each other's hands. It's not like a brief moment where they look at where they're holding hands and they let go. There's a few words said. I actually wanted to say the lines with each other, holding each other's hands to pace the amount of time it is.
We're too far apart to do that.
Do I come over and do that real quick and then we recap it?
We can.
Okay, we'll just edit this part out.
Okay,
we just did the hand experiment.
It was long enough for my hands to start. I was worried about my hands starting to sweat.
It's a fair amount of time before. And what's interesting, Tamlin is the one who breaks the contact because he gets annoyed at her.
Because he told her to stay at the house, and she's like, oh, but I thought I wasn't confined to the house.
And
Control. He wants to be in control, and he's not in control.
Yeah, like he's getting what he wants, sort of. Like, they're holding hands, and then it's like, oh, no.
You didn't listen to me, so I'm going to control the situation by rejecting you.
My way or nothing.
All men are children, even ferrymen.
Even ferrymen.
At the end of this scene, Feyre observes, I didn't detect a trace of triumph in him, but rather a deep, unending sort of shame and defeat. And as I read this, I wondered, does this thought endear Tamlin to her?
We kind of mentioned it when we were reviewing our notes. This is all coming from Feyre's point of view. So we have to remember she's not a
reliable narrator.
Yeah. So we have to remember she's not a reliable narrator. And this could easily be her projecting onto him.
What I think she's doing, I think she's trying to establish empathy for Tamlin, which is also key to her emotional intimacy, right? She has to be able to empathize with the person on the receiving end. And by projecting her own state of mind, she's better able to empathize.
By the end of this chapter, we've already established that the Naga itself was a very pivotal moment for their relationship and their own step forward. And so this is more, before we move on, kind of a callback at the very start of the chapter when Feyre shoots at the Naga. On page 132, she says, so I let my arrow fly. The tip glittered like a shooting star through the forest gloom. We've got night references here, people. We're seeing this again. That's Rhysand sneaking up.
I'm so glad you pointed it out because I saw it when I was rereading the chapters and I was like, Rhysand. But I didn't bother to put it down because I was like, it's too small. People think I'm crazy. So I'm glad you brought it up. And because you're right, Rhysand is everywhere.
Yeah. Feyre can't have a step forward with Tamlin without Rhysand being there one way or another. And this is, like I said, all from Feyre's point of view. So this is Feyre seeing her arrow as a shooting star. And at all points, Rhysand is with her. I can't wait till he's in the book and we talk about him.
I know. Soon.
So soon.
So moving on into chapter 16, in the aftermath of the Naga fight, Feyre is treated like a child. Despite the fact that she's killed 2 of the Naga, she is a child. Alice gives Feyre molten chocolate, which Feyre's never had before. And really, this is something you give a child after they've had a scare.
Yep. Or us.
And she loves it. And I don't blame her for loving it.
We love it.
Yeah, but Alice reprimands her. She is using the molten chocolate to establish her authority over Feyre. She has better knowledge about how to capture a cereal. She holds that against Feyre, which breadcrumb Feyre will use that knowledge later on in a different book.
I know. I love that where it's like, call back to a different book.
Even Alice taking time to explain how fairies age differently, she's treating Feyre again as a child for her ignorance, in addition to also reminding Feyre that she's inferior as a human because she will die before a fairy's even considered an adult.
As we're discussing this, I'm realizing Alice is quite literally giving her the birds and the bees talk.
Oh, yeah, she is.
Right?
Yeah.
She's actually sitting down like, well, in our community, when a mommy fae and a daddy fae love each other very much, they sometimes have kids. Sometimes they're at it like rabbits. Others not so much.
Yeah. It's so true. And again, so she's like in the 3rd grade, basically.
She's absolutely a child. And Alice has all this information for Feyre between whether it's how fairies procreate or how there is a highborn king. Alice won't tell her anything about it. No one will tell Feyre about it. And it's a secret that is pretty important, and it's a secret that Feyre should know and could probably actually help all of Prythian, but they're withholding it. Alice says on page 139, let Lord Tamlin deal with it. He's the only one who can. And that's not true. Feyre can break the curse, obviously. Like, you really need Feyre to do that. And secondly, it's weird hearing her say Lord Tamlin.
Which she hasn't done before.
We've never again. I don't think we ever really hear it again.
If we do, it's insignificant.
It's weird and gross. I don't like it. That knowledge other than when she goes and sees Lord Tamlin, they're continuing the knowledge of withholding. Like, Feyre starts to realize that they are withholding things from her, even without her realizing it. She discovers that fairies can lie and iron doesn't impact them. Although Tamlin didn't realize that Feyre believed that they couldn't lie, the Iron One was a secret that they did know about. They could have told Feyre about it early on, saying, look, iron doesn't kill us, but ash arrow does. Yay, you can still protect yourself. They're holding things from her, and she's discovering that.
What's interesting is that sandwich between these two incidents. So Alice treating her like a child and the revelation of these secrets, Feyre serves herself at dinner. And I think that that's really important because we've seen other people serving Feyre constantly when it comes to food, but Feyre's trying to exert her power. Look, she did this really hard thing. She killed 2 naga. She's capable of serving food to herself. Mm-hmm. She has power, yet it's sandwiched between these two instances of her being treated like a child. What I also love about that scene is that she serves herself food in front of Lucien, who promised to come to her aid and never did. And I think it's a statement to him that, like, look, I don't need you. I don't need your help.
Yep. I mean, I love that point that you make where, in this dining room with these 2 other fae, the 3 of them, food has always been a way of controlling. And the fact that she does, like, rub it in Lucien's face, as we like to say, fuck you. Fuck you. She was able to serve herself and kind of give him the food version of the middle finger, I guess.
Whatever that might be called. The bird. Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk. Once Lucien takes off, we have this...
Oh, quick question.
Sure.
Do you think Lucien takes off because he wants them to spend time together or because he's embarrassed of having not helped her?
That's a really good question. I guess it's both. I think I always read it as him trying to give them alone time. Mm-hmm. Because that's always been his agenda.
Yeah.
Right? Even if he doesn't like it. But I could see it being both.
Yeah. It was just it was like one of those things that popped up in my head. I was like, huh.
So after Lucien takes off, we have this intimate setting with Feyre and Tamlin, and it's their first alone time after the defeat of the Naga. What we see here is something we're going to see again and again with Tamlin and Feyre, that Tamlin makes Feyre feel small. She describes that the walls of the room pressed in on me. He reacts violently to her acknowledging that she went after the Suriel. And though this should be a warning sign, it isn't to her. The quote reads, Tamlin flinched as his claws shot out, slicing his face. This is reminiscent of the thorns scratching her face that kissed her face and cut her, made her bleed.
If your face bleeds, it means it's love.
It means it's love. So he must love her for her.
Because he cuts his own face.
I
really love imagining that where, because he's resting his chin on his hand and then he's so shocked that he just cuts himself. It's funny rereading it and like genuinely imagining it. I can't wait for the TV series to show us that part.
Oh, I hope it happens.
If it's not verbatim, like every single scene of this, then I think like they will know there's a revolt on their hands. So in this moment when Tamlin is so shocked that she went out on her own to go find the cereal, he immediately takes on this father role. He's gone from protector to father. He begins to actually reprimand her in a way. And on 142, he says, you actually snared the cereal, a human girl. He doesn't believe her at all at first.
He doesn't believe her. And I love that she corrects him before that moment. But he's like, you went after the cereal? And she's like, no, I caught it.
Yeah,
I love how flippant she is about that.
I caught the cereal. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. And she should be proud of herself. And I think because he's acting in this way, instead of valuing her and instead, once again, treating her like a child, when the topic of her illiteracy comes up and the power Tamlin holds over her, when it comes to being able to read and write, she's humiliated, just as a child would be humiliated by a parent.
He's holding the words that she wrote, trying to figure out what it is that she was like doing. Sorry, I'm going back. He stole those, right? He didn't did she throw them in the trash?
She threw them in the trash.
Oh, okay, so at least still he went through her trash. That's creepy. But the fact that
trash in the library, it's a common area.
Shouldn't have thrown it there. But it is like, okay, hey, by the way, I went through your trash, found these words, and I'm now going to ask you what it is, / I probably have a feeling what it is. And
I'm going to tease you about it.
Exactly. Like, is this, I assume this is how you want to kill me? First off, that doesn't even make sense. Why would a Q be on the list of how to kill you? To me, this was reminiscent of a parent with a report card. He's willing to chastise her, and he's willing to point out her illiteracy. In this moment, I guess you can say that he's fully realizing that she is illiterate. I think he probably had a hunch earlier than this, but he's trying to get that confirmation from her. And from there, from this parenting, reprimanding role, he immediately starts to tear her down in a different way. Tamlin starts to strip away her family connection by showing her that he knows her better than she knows herself. And I'm about to give a really long quote here, but I promise it'll be worth it. On page 143, he says, "You love them very much. I wonder if your family realizes it. That everything you've done wasn't about that promise to your mother or for your sake but for theirs. They're fools. Fools for not seeing it. You gave up so much for them." He lifted his other hand as if to brush her cheek. I braced myself for that touch, but he lowered it before making contact. "Do you even know how to laugh?" That last question just... When was the last time you laughed, Tamlin? Never. He's not even, he's not known. I don't think he, smiles or laughs until summer solstice when he's, watching her sexy dance for him. So he's stripping her down emotionally, and he sees the reaction that she has. And even though he's right about everything, even though everything he says is spot on, the power dynamic here is at play again because he sees her and she can't see him both literally and figuratively because he has the mask and he also won't tell her any of the truths. But he gets the right to see all of her, to chastise all of her.
To me, this is all emotional manipulation. This is very much how abusers manipulate their abusees. Mm-hmm. They tear down the individual's connections with other loved ones.
100%.
And makes the abusee feel like the only person who understands them is the abuser, and therefore they should submit to the abuser.
If Feyre's intimacy is through violence, then we can see that Tamlin's emotional intimacy is by tearing her down. And that is an abusive dynamic.
Yeah, he wants to control her. Why else would he do this except to be like, I'm offering you my help with your literacy issues, so you should take it. And I'm going to do that by making you feel like you're not seen by anybody but me.
It's power, and then it shows off, in your next note, his class above her.
as a High Lord, or as the son of a High Lord, he's been privileged with an education that Feyre does not have. Equally, he's privileged with magic that Feyre doesn't have, and he exerts this by altering her family's memories of her and of the incident back at their cabin. And though he has provided for them in terms of food and wealth, and he's provided for her in terms of food and wealth, Feyre naturally has this outward reaction of disgust. And it's only after this manipulation, as she's begun to reconsider, well, okay, he's given them what I wanted to give them, but never could. Maybe I would have asked for it to be this way if I'd known it was even an option. She starts to rationalize what he's done for her.
Yep.
And it supersedes her disturbance that a very unnatural thing has occurred, which is their memories have been altered.
This is an absolute moment of her, like you said, justifying things in her brain. She's starting to warp the way that she's thinking in order to have him fit the narrative she wants him to fit of the savior. But really what this is an issue of consent, right? She is angry at first that he altered their mind without her permission. And ultimately, it completely devalues her sacrifice. Everything that she's done for her family, walking away and going with this Fae that they didn't know anything about, they no longer have to actually worry or even remember it.
It takes me back to chapter 5 when they're leaving the cabin and she's like, I hope they... Basically, not I hope they suffer without me, but
oh no, they're going to suffer without me.
Yeah, I hope they realize how much I've done for them. She doesn't even get that.
There's no satisfaction.
No, he's taking it from her.
At the very least, it'd almost be can they at least remember I suffered a little bit? Come on, guys.
And yet somehow, like you said, Feyre's trying to make this all fit the narrative that she wants it to fit because she's beginning to establish this emotional intimacy with Tamlin. And I think if that had not occurred prior to this revelation, she wouldn't be justifying it.
Oh, completely. If she did not see his bloody abs just moments before.
And shuddered at the thought of them.
Yeah.
I think this change in her is best illustrated by her ability to see color and her desire to paint, because this is signaling to us as readers that she feels safe, or at least she wants to feel safe and is capable of desiring things other than survival. Just like the alteration of her family's memories, appealing to this sense in Feyre is part of Tamlin's seduction of her. And he woos her with these unnecessary gestures. Feyre observes, the firelight dances on his mask, warming the gold, setting the emeralds glinting. Such color and variation. Colors I didn't know the names of, colors I wanted to catalog and weave together, colors I had no reason not to explore now. She's celebrating the fact that her family is provided for and she doesn't have to worry about it, because what else does she have? What else can she do at this point?
Yeah.
She's not willing to fight him anymore because...
there's a couple reasons why she could not be willing to fight him. One, there's what can she do, right? What fight? What are you going to do? Fight for them not to be taken care of? But then the other lack of fighting is he's hot now.
She's so in awe of him and enamored with him that, she's lost the will to fight him. And when he offers her kindness, like painting supplies, etc., she thinks she has to work to earn it, which is really sad.
Yeah.
To me, it's this warring in herself, warring of who she was and who she wants to be. But she's leaning more and more into this who she wants to be, who she is when she feels safe, which is an interesting time for Feyre.
She is willing to shed her responsibilities relatively quickly, both when she realized her promise to her mother was done, and now that she's really realizing her family's taken care of. Can't blame her for it.
Nope.
I ditched them too.
I did. I ditched my family.
I know. I love that Feyre is leaning into art more here, bringing it back to something that I spoke on in earlier episodes. Art represents feminine to Feyre, and the way that I'm defining this is that it's a luxury for her. It's a symbol of her not having to struggle. It's a symbol of having money. It's a symbol of being able to indulge in things that she's not able to do. And it's something that she surrendered her identity from before and instantly leans into this artist and this feminine side. At one point, she says that she's not a good artist. And the fact that I believe Sarah J. Maas really kind of has this art is the feminine, art is this, more delicate side of Feyre, let's just say the feminine side of Feyre. It's interesting that she's almost saying, I don't know how to be feminine. I don't know how to let go. I don't know how to not be this hunter provider. It's something that she gets to explore. And it's just an interesting literary device that she uses in that moment. Not that this is what Feyre is consciously thinking. Obviously, Feyre doesn't say I'm a woman now. It's called interpretation, people. Tamlin doesn't see the value of art within that same moment. Mm-hmm. He says, when he's talking about the Hall of Art, the gallery, on page 146, he says, it seems like a waste of time to have the servants keep it clean. And it's the same way that he felt about her in the beginning, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. It was a waste of time to try to woo her and break the curse because she was a waste of time.
I agree. And I think you see it again at the start of the next book. And that's all I'm going to say. This idea of waste of time to me speaks a lot to Tamlin's place of privilege that he's always been in and this sense of entitlement. And I think that that's also exemplified in one snippet of their conversation that I found really interesting on rereading this chapter. Tamlin has these very noble sensibilities. He says to Feyre, but had I been old enough, I would have. Against slavery, against tyranny, I would go to my death, no matter whose freedom I was defending. It's so ironic, because what does he do when they are under the mountain?
Jack shit.
Jack shit. He sits on his ass and watches.
I absolutely love Feyre's response in that moment as well to Tamlin, because it mirrors him in the sense that it's the opposite.
Exactly. She thinks, I wasn't sure if I would do the same. My priority would be to protect my family, and I would have picked whatever side could keep them safest. I hadn't thought of it as a weakness until now.
You do not do that, Feyre.
No,
you save everyone.
Yeah, she abandons her family and goes to save everybody under the mountain.
Yep.
They both think themselves one thing and are at their truest nature the opposite.
I freaking love that moment. This chapter in particular was the most emotional whiplash between he's a protector, he's a father, he's reprimanding her, they're into each other. What? Okay, she's mad at him again. Now they're connecting. And just to end this chapter, finally, we've been seeing romance bloom, but this is where the dynamic between both of them, where both of the romance starts to happen and both are getting a reaction. I'm going to bring it back to another long quote here. When Tamlin talks to Feyre about, this gallery that he has in his house, he then says on page 146, he rubbed at his neck, faint color creeping into those cheeks. He's getting shy about asking her out on a date.
The High Lord is capable of being shy.
It's sweet. And then when she says yes, quote, he smiled at me still, broadly and without restraint or hesitation. Isaac never smiled at me like that. Isaac had never made my breath catch just a little bit. The feeling was startling enough that I walked out, grasping the crumpled paper in my pocket, as if doing so could somehow keep the answering smile from tugging on my lips. It's so sweet.
It is sweet.
It's so sweet. Amy hates this note that I made. You don't hate it, just eye roll. I said, fun note. She's holding the crumpled up piece of paper, but later on, in future books, he would leave her like a crumpled up piece of paper on the floor, laying there on the floor, because she remembers it all too well.
Insert eye roll here.
That was a Taylor Swift reference.
For all those who did not know it. But you know what? That crumpled up piece of paper is resilient.
Yeah, she is.
What I love about chapter 17 is that I feel like this epitomizes Feyre's change. So in earlier chapters, Feyre is not shy about acknowledging her self-defecation. If she poops herself, if she
pees
herself.
Even if she doesn't, she just preps herself. She's like, yeah, I'm going to piss myself. It's fine.
Yeah. And she's not shy about it, which we've talked about before. And this signals her humanity. But what's so interesting about the start of chapter 17 is that when the mutilated fairy is brought into Tamlin's manor, it's Lucien who vomits and not Feyre, which lowers him in status.
Mm-hmm.
And Feyre, on the other hand, pins down the injured fairy. On page 150, it was instinct or mercy or desperation, perhaps, to grab the fairy's upper arms and shove him down again, pinning him to the table as gentle as I could.
He must be pretty weak.
I mean, he's in a lot of pain, so yeah, he must be pretty weak. But it's super important because it's showing her transition into power. Just like her serving herself food, she's seizing control of things that she should not be able to seize control of. Or
quite literally a fairy. Yeah.
Like a fairy. Before that quote, just like a couple paragraphs before, she observed the colors of the fairy's skin and described him as a butterfly. She is the pin pinning down the insect. So again, Feyre's trapped a Suriel. She's killed the Naga, and now she pins down, granted, an injured fairy. But she is powerful.
Yeah.
And we are led so often to believe that she is not.
I love that call out. It's so good.
Thank you. I was so proud of myself when I saw it. But, how many times have I read this chapter? I only noticed it today when I reread the chapter.
I mean, that's just the art of good writing. Whether Sarah J. Maas knew what she was doing or not, sometimes writers just have good instincts, and it could be one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this before, that by the first time we read this and at the end of the book, I was skeptical of, could she have actually done all this stuff? Was she actually that powerful? She went up against all these fairies. That's kind of weird.
But we're seeing time and time again that she does. She's capable of it. What I also really like about this section is that we are made to understand that death is common to both races, both humans and fairies. Their desires as they die overlap as well. I think this also solidifies Feyre's growing power because she's not as insignificant or inferior as she has led herself to believe. In fact, I think that her exhibition of empathy in this moment is what really woos Tamlin.
Oh, he gets his rocks off with it.
Oh, yeah, he does. When Tamlin asks Feyre why she would hold the dying fairy's hand, she said, "Because I wouldn't want to die alone. Because I'd want someone to hold my hand until the end, and a while after that. That's something everyone deserves, human or fairy."
Let's hold off on notes when we do the breadcrumbs, maybe.
Okay, yeah, I'll
because if you want more info, stick around.
We have lots of observations on this. My note says, "Is this the time or place for all this wooing?"
As the dead bodies between them, they're just staring at each other's eyes, like with like fuck me eyes, just
kind of.
Yeah.
The fairy between them is dying, and Feyre desires to see Tamlin's expression under his mask.
Yeah, she wants to strip him, literally.
No, you're right. I didn't think of it that way. To me, I was like, oh, this signals her increasing interest and desire. But
She's just she like, wants take to strip it him. Off, remove it. So once again, we're seeing that emotional intimacy through blood, through death and fighting. But when Feyre starts to say that she wants to go with Tamlin to bury the body, after all, she was just held that fairy down. She saw him die. She held his hand. Tamlin tells her no, and that he has to do it alone. Intimacy is a one-way street here. Feyre's developing that emotional intimacy. Tamlin isn't. His version is stripping her down. Well, that's still not emotional intimacy. I'm not saying Feyre's emotional intimacy is the go-to way, but you can bond with someone when you've both been through something traumatic.
Right.
And he's not letting her in at all there.
She is very vulnerable with her trauma. He is very closed off. Despite the horror and death that is taking place in front of her, Feyre continues to indulge in thoughts of painting and color, just as she had in the previous chapter. She observes that the fairy's skin was velvet smooth and slippery, a texture I would never be able to paint, not even if I had eternity to master it. I stroked his limp hair, its texture like liquid night. Another I would never be able to paint, but would try to, perhaps forever.
Liquid night.
Liquid night, yeah. That's obviously a Rhysand reference, but I think also what I came to realize as I was thinking through why is this happening, I think it's her coping mechanism. I think that her returning to the desire to paint and returning to the observations of color and texture is how she copes with these traumatic experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also her way of honoring the dead.
Yeah.
This idea that she would perhaps forever try to paint the color of his hair.
Well, we talked about before that she also describes things that she fears in the terms of painting. I would never be able to paint it. Like, she always underestimates herself or wouldn't be able to capture it. And, this is also a very scary moment. It is coping.
Yeah, no, it's true.
A lot of things happened in these chapters that we covered. A lot of big things.
Yeah, when you were like, we need to do these 3 chapters as one episode, I was like, there's not going to be enough content.
And then sure enough,
I was wrong.
It's the longest episode, maybe. I don't know. We haven't edited it yet.
No.
But it was a hunk of an episode. And there were some breadcrumbs that Sarah J. Maas left.
Yes. So these breadcrumbs, I would say all of them foreshadow the end of the book. On page 148, a pale, faceless woman dragged her blood-red nails across my throat, splitting me open bit by bit. She kept asking for my name, but every time I tried to speak, my blood bubbled out of the shallow wounds on my neck, choking me.
How did she know? Like, that literally is, oh my God, is that Rhysand sending her what would happen?
Oh, maybe.
Because it's too accurate.
Right. The whole, like, what's my name?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's like it's a freakishly accurate moment, and we can already know that Rhysand is capable of sending her images. We get that later on in the book. I always thought, like, does she have powers? Is she able to see the future? But we never get this again. I'm wondering if this is Rhysand trying to scare her away.
Maybe. Because the whole asking for her name and the choking her, they are very accurate to what happens.
Mm-hmm. Because Rhysand would know.
Food for thought. Also on page 148, but I'd heard screams like that before in the forest at home when I didn't make a clean kill and the animals suffered. I couldn't stand it, and I had to know. I just kind of went, oh, when I read that. You know, Feyre's poor, tender heart, it's clearer to us later that she actually hates killing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this foreshadows her PTSD after the events under the mountain.
Fine. And then we go into page 152. How long does it take for a soul to fade from the body? And it's an interesting question because, again, if you don't know, have you ever read the ending? Sorry, can't help you. But she literally dies at the end and her soul hangs around. And the question is, how long does a soul hang around? Well, Feyre answers that. And finally, on page 153, we have the quote we referenced earlier, because I'd want someone to hold my hand until the end and a while after that. Let's get into it a little bit.
Yeah. We don't normally talk about our breadcrumbs in depth, but this one was really interesting. We went back because we're like, does Rhysand hold her hand? And I made a note earlier that we didn't talk about, which is Tamlin doesn't hold her hand, despite knowing this desire of Feyre. When Feyre dies, he leaves her to go kill Amarantha.
We'll go more into it when it's time, but Feyre's death is an interesting way of viewing how Rhysand and Tamlin both handle it. Again, the reason why we're talking about this now is because Feyre in this moment is talking all about her own mortality and death, and she does die later. It says, like, what happens then? Like you said, Tamlin knows how Feyre would want it. Tamlin didn't fight Amarantha when she still had power. He only fought her when he was powerful again. And kind of the opposite. Rhysand fought her when she didn't have power, but didn't fight her when he had his power back again, because I guess he knew Tamlin would take care of it.
But he also doesn't hold Feyre's hand.
Yeah, no one holds her hand when she dies.
Which is really sad.
It's super sad. We also discussed, like, because we both thought one reaches out to the other, right?
Yeah.
I swear I thought I had read that Rhysand reaches out to her on the floor, and I think that's even a trope I've seen several times on TikTok. It never happens.
No, it doesn't. In fact, Feyre is the one who reaches out her hand to Amarantha to get her to stop. And by the way, because Feyre's soul is still hanging around, she's witnessing all of this.
Yeah.
And I think this speaks to the sense of isolation she's going to feel later on. That
she died alone.
She died alone. Everyone watching her, nobody helping her, nobody touching her, nobody providing her the comfort that she afforded to others.
Yep. That's heartbreaking.
It is really sad.
So we had some questions that we had at the top of the episode that we'd like to answer. So Feyre's emotional intimacy is sought or gained through violence or self-deprecation, and she projects her own lack of self-worth onto Tamlin, and that's how gets her emotional intimacy. Tamlin, on the other hand, his is more through stripping down the other person. He gets to not be vulnerable, but he needs the other person to be vulnerable. We're not saying either one is right or wrong.
But that's just how it is.
That's just how it is with them.
And for our second question, you know, what I love this because Feyre's defeat of the Naga, even though she doesn't kill all of them, she killed 2 of them. Afterward, we really see Feyre challenge what is status quo, what the expectations are for a human versus a fae. She pins down the fairy. She's helping where Lucian is vomiting. And we're going to continue to see that I think Feyre reminds herself and those around her that she is stronger than she appears, and just by virtue of being fae does not mean that they are automatically superior to her. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we will be exploring chapters 18 through 22 of A Court of Thorns
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo.
Or find us on TikTok and Instagram. Our handle is booktalkforbooktalk. Thanks for listening.
Bye. Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.